My name is Dan. I'm 33 years old, and for most of my life, I believed I had it all figured out. I was a software architect, not just coding, but designing the very backbone of digital worlds for a major tech firm out of my quiet home office in Havenwood, Washington. It's the kind of town where the air smells perpetually of pine and rain, and the Columbia River glistens under perpetually overcast skies. Everyone knows everyone here, from the precise number of sprinkles on Mrs. Henderson's morning donut to the exact time the mayor's cat wakes up for breakfast. It was simple, predictable, and I thought I liked it. Or, at least, I'd convinced myself I did. My routine was a meticulously crafted algorithm. Wake at dawn, brew industrial strength coffee, dive into lines of code that would make most people's eyes glaze over, endure endless virtual meetings with my team scattered from Seattle to Silicon Valley, then retreat into the muted glow of my monitor, scrolling through a digital landscape that offered more comfort than the real one. My apartment, a modest loft above a defunct antique shop, wasn't grand, but it was mine. Bookshelves sagged under the weight of obscure programming manuals and dog-eared science fiction novels. An ancient, overstuffed armchair, a relic from a forgotten estate sale, served as my command center. It was enough, it had always been enough, until it wasn't. My family, the Caldwells, were pillars of Havenwood. My father, Robert Caldwell, was a titan in municipal law, his reputation as unblemished as his perfectly tailored suits. His voice, when he chose to use it, carried the weight of stone, each word precisely measured. My mother, Eleanor Caldwell, a former high school principal, ran our household with the same unwavering discipline she applied to unruly teenagers. To the outside world, we were the epitome of success, propriety, and old money decorum. Inside, however, love was a silent language, expressed not through hugs or declarations, but through adherence to unspoken rules, punctuality at dinner, pristine report cards, and above all, absolutely no ripple in the serene pond of the Caldwell family's honor. As the eldest, the burden of these expectations fell squarely on my shoulders. I excelled in school, quarterbacked the high school football team, graduated top of my class with a degree in computer science, and secured a coveted position in a burgeoning tech startup. I wasn't a prodigy, but I was diligent, driven by an inherent need to earn their approving, if distant, nods. But the true heartbeat of our rigid home, the one who saw beyond the polished facade, was my younger sister, Chloe. Chloe was 5 years my junior, a wisp of a girl with eyes the color of a summer sky and a laugh that could cut through the hushed tension of our house like a sunbeam. I remember the day she came home from the hospital, a tiny bundle wrapped in a blue blanket, eliciting a rare, genuine smile from our parents, a sight I barely witnessed again. Chloe grew, not into a shadow of our parents' expectations, but a gentle breeze, soft and kind, yet possessing a quiet resilience I only fully understood years later. She was my confidant, my silent accomplice in midnight cookie raids, the only one who could make me laugh even after a particularly brutal lecture from father about a shattered window or a B- in chemistry. I taught her to ride her bike, to craft makeshift kites from old newspapers, and the best hiding spots in the overgrown backyard when mother's disappointment loomed. We were a team, an unbreakable unit against the world, and sometimes against our own home. But the facade of perfection in the Caldwell household was brittle, riddled with invisible cracks that began to spiderweb when I was 15. Nights, when my parents assumed I was asleep, I'd hear them. Not shouting, never shouting. Their arguments were whispered, sharp as obsidian shards, cutting through the thin walls of my room. Mother's voice, a low murmur about wanting to leave, yearning for a freedom she never articulated. Father's heavy reply, steeped in duty and the preservation of our name, of us, of me and Chloe. I didn't grasp the full weight of it then, but I knew something was profoundly wrong. One night, I found Mother in the kitchen, nursing a glass of wine, her eyes raw and swollen. I didn't dare ask, just retreated quietly to my room. Later, I overheard her on the phone, telling a friend that she had considered divorce, but stayed for the children's sake. I didn't know whether to feel grateful or guilty, perhaps both. Chloe, mercifully, was too young to perceive the deeper currents of discontent, but she was sensitive enough to feel the chilling tension. Once, when she was 7, I found her huddled in her room, clutching her favorite worn doll, her voice barely a whisper, "Dan, why doesn't Mom smile anymore?" I patted her head, my own chest aching. Mom's just tired, Chloe. If you're good, she'll smile again. I wasn't sure I believed my own words. Despite the encroaching shadows, Chloe and I clung to our shared moments of joy, our secret language, our shared laughter, our elaborate schemes to feign illness, to skip school, and binge on cartoons. I remember when she was 10, she lost a delicate silver locket mother had given her for her birthday. Her tears were torrential, fueled by a terror of mother's inevitable displeasure. I spent the entire day meticulously scouring every nook and cranny of the house, finally unearthing it beneath the heavy mahogany sofa. When I placed it back in her trembling hand, her eyes ignited, as if I had single-handedly saved the world. "You're my superhero," she declared, and I laughed. But a quiet thought echoed in my mind. If I were truly a superhero, I'd take our whole family somewhere, anywhere, where everyone smiled more. When I left for college, Chloe was 13, teetering on the edge of womanhood. She retained her gentle nature, but a nascent fire of independent thought began to flicker within her. Her dreams were her own, not pre-approved by our parents. She confided in me her desire to become a nurse, to care for people at their most vulnerable. I was immensely proud, but a knot of worry tightened in my stomach. Our parents had meticulously charted her future, a predictable path in law or business, fields deemed stable and respectable. Anything outside that meticulously drawn line was considered a deviation, a potential blemish on the Caldwell name. After graduation, I chose to return to Havenwood, a calculated decision to stay near Chloe. My software architect position allowed me the flexibility to work remotely, and my salary, while not exorbitant, provided a comfortable living and allowed for modest savings. I cherished the weekends spent at my parents' house, listening to Chloe's enthusiastic recounting of her nursing school triumphs, her new friends, her unwavering dedication to a future our parents silently disapproved of. Those dinners, however, remained an exercise in polite awkwardness. Father would drone on about municipal bonds, mother would subtly probe Chloe about her backup career plans, and I would desperately interject with anodyne stories about my tech colleagues. Chloe, typically subdued, would always seek out my gaze, a silent plea in her eyes that said, "You get it, don't you? You understand." Everything hummed along in this carefully constructed equilibrium until one crisp autumn evening, Chloe, now 22 and in her final year of nursing school, sent me a message. It was short, cryptic, and sent a jolt of ice through my veins. "Dan, I need to see you. Don't tell Mom and Dad." My heart hammered against my ribs. Chloe wasn't prone to dramatics. This was serious. I called immediately, but her phone went straight to voicemail. A text followed. "Tonight, the old diner on Elm Street. 8 sharp. Don't be late." I arrived at the diner early, a lukewarm coffee steaming sadly in front of me. The streetlights outside cast long, distorted shadows on the rain-slicked pavement, reflecting the muted glow of the diner's neon sign. My mind raced, replaying her words, "Don't tell Mom and Dad," like a broken record. The bell above the door jingled, and Chloe walked in. She was enveloped in an oversized wool coat, her usually bright blonde hair pulled back in a haphazard bun, but her eyes were swollen and red, as if she had been crying for hours. She slid into the booth opposite me, her hands clasped so tightly together her knuckles were white, her gaze fixed stubbornly on the scarred tabletop. The air between us was thick, heavy with unspoken truths, punctuated only by the low hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant clatter of dishes from the kitchen. "Chloe," I began, forcing my voice to remain calm, though my hands trembled around my coffee cup. "Are you okay? What's going on?" She bit her lip, her eyes blinking rapidly, desperately trying to hold back the torrent. Finally, she looked up, her voice barely a whisper, trembling with a fragile vulnerability that shattered my carefully constructed composure. "Dan," she choked out, I'm pregnant." The world, the diner, the rain outside, everything seemed to freeze. I stared at her, searching for any flicker of a mischievous grin, any hint that this was some elaborate, cruel joke. But there was none. Her eyes were brimming, her lips pressed into a thin, desperate line. It was true. My throat constricted, a knot of fear and confusion tightening around my windpipe. I wanted to speak, to shout, to demand answers, but no words would come. How far along? I finally managed to croak, my voice sounding alien, like it belonged to someone else. My mind was a whirlwind. Chloe, my little sister, the girl who once relied on me to scare away imaginary monsters from under her bed, was going to be a mother. She looked down, her hands twisting in her lap. 5 months, she whispered, so softly I had to lean forward to catch it. I don't know what to do, Dan. I'm so scared. 5 months? I repeated, my voice louder than intended, a raw edge of disbelief in my tone. I wasn't an expert, but even I knew 5 months wasn't a recent discovery. Chloe, why? Why did you keep this a secret for so long? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Her eyes, now fully unleashed, streamed with tears. I was too scared, she sobbed, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking violently. I thought I could handle it. But then it all became too much. Mark, her voice broke completely. Mark. I frowned, desperately trying to place the name. Mark Peterson. I'd met him once, briefly, when I picked Chloe up from a college event. A sharp-suited finance major, all slick charm and confident smiles, exuding an air of untouchable arrogance, as if the world was his for the taking. Something about his eyes, however, had always bothered me. A predatory gleam, a hollowness that belied his polished exterior. What about Mark? I pressed, a cold dread seeping into my bones. Does he know? Chloe nodded slowly, each movement a fresh agony. I told him 2 months ago. At first he said he'd stay. He promised we'd figure it out, but then he just vanished. No calls, no texts, nothing. His roommate said he moved to New York for some high-flying investment banking job. He left me. He doesn't want the baby. A surge of volcanic heat erupted within me, my blood boiling with a primal rage. Mark, that arrogant, soulless jerk, had abandoned Chloe, my sister, the kindest, most gentle soul I knew. My hands clenched into fists. An unbearable urge to drive straight to New York, hunt him down, and introduce his face to the nearest brick wall. But then I looked at Chloe, so small and fragile, huddled across from me, and the anger was tempered by a fierce protectiveness. My rage wouldn't solve anything. It wouldn't help her. Okay, I said, my voice strained, fighting to keep it steady, though my hands were still trembling. Okay, we'll figure this out. You're not alone. I'm here. I reached across the table, taking her icy hand in mine. Her grip was desperate, a lifeline in a turbulent sea. Dan, I don't want to have an abortion, Chloe whispered, her voice firmer now, though still fragile. I know what Mom and Dad will say, what everyone will think, but I can't. This is my baby. I nodded, my mind a tangled mess of fear, frustration, and a burgeoning sense of responsibility. I didn't know what to do, how to navigate this treacherous landscape, how to protect her from the inevitable fallout, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wouldn't let her face this alone. Then we'll keep the baby, I said, the word surprising even myself, sounding as if it was the most natural, obvious decision in the world. But Chloe, you have to tell Mom and Dad. They need to know. Her eyes widened, filled with a fresh wave of panic. No, you don't understand, Dan. They'll kill me. They'll never forgive me. You know how they are. God, I knew all too well. Our parents, with their unyielding rules, their obsession with appearances, their ironclad grip on family honor. A daughter, unwed, pregnant at 22 in a small town like Havenwood, where gossip spread faster than wildfire and reputations were meticulously guarded. It wasn't just a scandal, it was a stain, an indelible mark of shame that would, in their eyes, forever tarnish the Caldwell name. But I also knew we couldn't hide it. Chloe had managed for 5 months, but her growing belly would soon betray the truth. I squeezed her hand, trying to infuse her with the strength I wasn't sure I possessed myself. Chloe, listen to me, I said, my voice low and calm, trying to soothe her rising hysteria. We can't hide this forever. They'll find out, sooner or later. It's better they hear it from you, from us, than from some nosy neighbor. I met her gaze, holding it steady. I'll be there with you, every step of the way. I won't let you face them alone, I promise. Her eyes, glistening with unshed tears, searched mine, desperately seeking a glimmer of hope. You promise? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I promise, I reaffirmed, the word tasting like ash in my mouth, knowing the storm we were about to walk into. I could already picture Father's face, his lips pursed into a thin, disapproving line, his eyes sharp as razors. I could hear Mother's voice, not raised in anger, but cold, precise, whispering words that cut deeper than any shout. But I wouldn't let Chloe face it alone. Not ever. 2 days later, I drove Chloe to a small, nondescript clinic on the outskirts of Portland, a place far enough from Havenwood that no one would recognize us. She sat silently in the passenger seat, her hands cupped protectively over her still subtle bump, as if shielding the nascent life within her from a hostile world. I stole glances at her, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "It'll be okay," I said, but my voice lacked the conviction I desperately wanted it to convey. That afternoon, with a heavy heart and a churning stomach, I drove Chloe to our parents' house. The two-story colonial, with its meticulously manicured lawn and the polished brass plaque proudly displaying the Caldwells by the front door, looked exactly as it always had. But today, it felt alien, cold, like a fortress from which we, its own blood, were about to be excluded. Our parents were in the living room when we entered. Father was engrossed in his financial papers in his worn leather armchair, while Mother, ever the picture of meticulous domesticity, was wiping down the antique dining table, her movements slow and deliberate. They looked up, a flicker of surprise in their eyes at our unexpected arrival. "Daniel, Chloe, what is the meaning of this unannounced visit?" Mother inquired, her voice soft but laced with an undeniable edge of suspicion. Chloe stood rigidly beside me, her fingers digging into my arm. I took a deep, fortifying breath, the air suddenly thick and heavy. "Mom, Dad, we need to talk." My voice was shakier than I intended. It's about Chloe." Father slowly folded his newspaper, his eyes narrowing, fixed on Chloe's pale face. "What is it, Chloe?" he demanded, his voice low, a prelude to a storm. Chloe took a trembling breath, then, her voice barely a whisper, yet remarkably clear in the sudden silence, she uttered the words that would shatter our family's fragile peace. "I'm pregnant. 5 months along." Silence. A profound, crushing silence. The air in the room seemed to vanish. Mother froze, her hand gripping the dusting cloth, her knuckles bone white. Father sat bolt upright, his expression shifting from surprise to a volcanic fury that erupted from deep within him. "What?" he roared, his voice echoing, shattering the oppressive quiet. "I'm sorry," Chloe sobbed, tears finally cascading down her face. "I didn't mean for this to happen, but I want to keep the baby." Mother stepped forward, her face hardened into an emotionless mask, her eyes sharp as shards of ice. "Chloe," she stated, her voice dangerously low, each word a hammer blow. "Do you realize what you have done?" Father, recovering from his initial shock, rose from his armchair, his posture rigid, his face a mask of incandescent rage. "Disgrace," he spat, the word dripping with venom. "You have brought shame upon this family, upon our name, the Caldwell name, which we have painstakingly built for generations, now tarnished by your indiscretion." He gestured wildly, his hand sweeping across the meticulously decorated room as if Chloe's very presence defiled it. Chloe recoiled, her hand tightening on my arm, her body trembling uncontrollably. Her face was ashen, her eyes wide with a terror I recognized all too well from my own childhood, a terror born from the crushing weight of their disapproval. "Dad, please," I interjected, stepping slightly in front of Chloe, shielding her. "It's not like that. Accidents happen. Chloe is scared. She needs our support, not your judgment." Father turned his furious gaze on me, his eyes blazing. "Support? Daniel, are you deaf? Blind? Your sister has committed an unforgivable sin. In this town, in our community, this will be catastrophic. Our reputation, our standing, everything we have worked for, destroyed." His voice was a guttural snarl, alien to my ears. I had never seen him so unhinged. "Reputation? What about your daughter's well-being?" I retorted, my own voice rising, fueled by a simmering resentment that had been building for years. "Chloe is family. This is your grandchild. Doesn't that count for anything?" Mother finally found her voice, a chillingly calm and cutting tone that was far more effective than Father's bluster. "Daniel, do not presume to lecture us on family. Family is built on respect, on adherence to values, on upholding what is right. This This is a betrayal of everything we stand for. She looked at Chloe, her eyes devoid of warmth. Who is the father, Chloe? Mark, does he intend to take responsibility? Chloe's voice was a barely audible whimper. He left. He doesn't want anything to do with us. There, father roared, seizing upon it like a shark scents blood. A coward. A scoundrel who abandons his responsibilities. And you, Chloe, you allowed yourself to be used, to bring such a burden upon yourself, upon us. He paced furiously, his hands clasped behind his back, his heavy footsteps thudding against the polished hardwood. This cannot stand. This child, it cannot be born into our family. It must be handled. The word handled hung in the air, a chilling implication that sent a shiver down my spine. My blood ran cold. What are you saying, Dad? I demanded, my voice sharp with apprehension. He means, Mother interjected, her voice still eerily calm, that there are options, Chloe, discrete options. We can arrange for alternatives. It can still be kept quiet, for everyone's sake. Chloe gasped, her eyes wide with horror as if struck by a physical blow. No, she cried, her voice raw with anguish. Never! This is my baby! I won't do that! Then you leave us no choice, Father declared, his voice suddenly quiet, but laced with an icy finality that froze me to the core. He stopped pacing, his eyes fixed on Chloe with an expression I can only describe as complete repudiation. If you choose to proceed with this mistake, then you are no longer a Caldwell. You are no longer our daughter. The words hung in the air, a death knell for our family. Chloe whimpered, a choked sound, like a wounded animal. I felt my own heart crack, a sharp, searing pain ripping through my chest. For years, I had navigated their expectations, walked on eggshells, swallowed my own opinions to maintain the semblance of peace, to protect Chloe from their relentless judgment. But this was a line I would not allow them to cross. Robert, Mother cried, a rare flicker of distress in her hardened eyes. Are you certain? Absolutely, he stated, his jaw clenched, his eyes unwavering. There is no other way to preserve what we have built. This disgrace will not be associated with our name. I stepped fully in front of Chloe, my body shielding her trembling frame. Fine, I said, my voice low, laced with a fury I had never unleashed before, a lifetime of suppressed anger finally boiling over. If that's your decision, then it's mine too. If Chloe is no longer your daughter, then I am no longer your son. The words hung in the air, thick with defiance. My parents stared at me, their expressions a mixture of shock and disbelief. They had expected me to mediate, to reason, to enforce their will, not to join Chloe in exile. Daniel, don't be absurd, Mother finally managed, her voice strained. You are the heir. You are the one who understands responsibility. My responsibility, I retorted, my voice firm and unwavering, is to my sister, to my family, the true family, not some arbitrary construct of appearances and outdated honor. I looked at Chloe, whose eyes were wide with a mix of fear and dawning hope. Come on, Chloe, I said softly, taking her hand and pulling her gently towards the door. We're leaving. And we did. We walked out of that meticulously perfect house, out of their lives and into the cold autumn air, leaving behind the shattered remnants of a family that had valued reputation over love. I didn't look back. There was nothing left for me there. The drive to my apartment was silent, punctuated only by Chloe's soft, intermittent sobs. My own mind was a whirlwind of emotions, anger, disbelief, a profound sense of loss, but also a strange, quiet sense of liberation. It was over. The tightrope walk, the constant striving for approval, the suffocating expectations, all gone. When we arrived at my loft, I led Chloe inside. The place, usually a sanctuary of ordered solitude, suddenly felt small, cluttered, yet strangely comforting. It's not much, I said, gesturing vaguely around the living room, but it's home. You can stay here for as long as you need. There's a spare room, or you can take the couch for now. Whatever you need. Chloe looked at me, her eyes red-rimmed but now clear, a fragile gratitude shining through the remnants of her tears. Thank you, Dan, she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you. Over the next few weeks, my life, once a carefully planned algorithm, became a chaotic, beautiful mess. Chloe moved into the spare bedroom, her few belongings overflowing into the living room. My quiet, solitary routine was replaced by the soft sounds of her moving about, the scent of her favorite tea brewing in the mornings, and the occasional nervous laughter as she navigated her new reality. I helped her find a new OB/GYN in Portland, discreetly, miles from Havenwood. I went to every appointment, sitting in silent solidarity as she listened to the rhythmic thump of her baby's heartbeat, tears welling in her eyes each time. I researched prenatal care, baby supplies, and even arcane parenting forums. My coding hours shifted, flexing around her needs. My colleagues, used to my predictable schedule, subtly noticed my increased unavailability, but I offered no explanations. Some simply nodded, a knowing, empathetic look in their eyes. Others, the more gossipy types, just shrugged. It was none of their business. My parents, true to their word, cut us off entirely. Calls went unanswered. Emails bounced back. When I drove by their house, it was like looking at a ghost. The Caldwell name, once a badge of honor, now felt like a prison sentence, a reminder of the toxic pride that had broken us. Chloe, despite the emotional turmoil, was remarkably resilient. She continued her nursing studies online, determined to finish her degree. She spent hours researching baby names, nursery ideas, and everything related to motherhood, a fierce protectiveness already blooming within her. She was scared, yes, but she was also filled with a quiet joy, a sense of purpose that transcended the pain of her disownment. As her belly grew, so did her confidence. She started to venture out more, taking walks around Havenwood, her head held higher, no longer shrinking from the occasional curious glance or whispered comment. Our neighbors, a tight-knit community, were a mix of reactions. Some, the older, more conservative types, gave us wide berth, their expressions a mixture of disapproval and thinly veiled judgment. But others, the younger families, the ones who had seen the Caldwell's rigid facade for what it was, offered quiet smiles, a sympathetic nod, or even an unexpected casserole left on our doorstep. Havenwood, it turned out, was not as monolithic as my parents had always believed. There was compassion too, beneath the veneer of small-town gossip. One afternoon, about a month before Chloe was due, I found her sitting on the old armchair, a maternity pillow propped behind her, humming a lullaby to her swelling belly. A small smile played on her lips, a rare moment of peace. I sat down opposite her, watching her. "You know," I said softly, "you're going to be an amazing mother, Chloe." She looked up, startled, then smiled. A genuine, heartfelt smile that reached her eyes. "I hope so, Dan. I really hope so. It's just a lot. And I still feel so guilty sometimes. Like I let everyone down." "Don't you dare feel guilty," I said firmly, reaching over and taking her hand. "You didn't let anyone down. You made a choice. The brave choice. And you chose to be happy. That's more than most people can say." She squeezed my hand, her eyes glistening. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Dan. You're my rock." "We're in this together," I reaffirmed, a fierce determination swelling within me. Always. On a stormy night in late winter, the phone rang. It was Chloe, her voice a frantic whisper. "Dan, it's time! My water just broke!" Panic, cold and sharp, immediately pierced through me. Okay, deep breaths, Chloe. "I'm coming. We'll get you to the hospital." The drive to the hospital was a blur of flashing wipers, rain-slicked roads, and Chloe's increasingly frequent contractions. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Everything I had learned, all the theories, all the prepared scenarios, vanished in the face of this raw, visceral reality. Hours later, after what felt like an eternity of pain and pushing, a piercing cry filled the delivery room. And then, silence. A sudden, profound silence, followed by the soft murmur of the nurses, the doctor's quiet pronouncement, and then Chloe's voice, raw with emotion. "Dan, he's here. He's beautiful." I stepped forward, my legs feeling like jelly. In Chloe's arms, wrapped snugly in a soft white blanket, was a tiny, perfect bundle. His face was scrunched up, tiny fists clenched, a shock of dark hair clinging to his scalp. He was so small, so utterly vulnerable, yet so incredibly powerful. My nephew, my family. Tears, hot and unexpected, streamed down my face. I hadn't cried in years, not since Chloe was 7 and I found her locket. But looking at this tiny new life, everything converged. The pain, the anger, the love, the fear, the hope. It was overwhelming. Chloe looked at me, a radiant smile on her face, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Dan," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Meet Michael." Michael. A strong, simple name. I reached out a trembling finger, gently touching his impossibly soft cheek. He stirred, his tiny hand grasping my finger, holding on with surprising strength. In that moment, the world shifted. The Caldwell name, the family honor, the gossip of Havenwood, it all faded into insignificance. All that mattered was this tiny, perfect life and the brave woman who had brought him into the world. The first few months of Michael's life were a beautiful, exhausting whirlwind. My loft, once quiet and orderly, was transformed into a symphony of baby cries, coos, and the constant hum of a white noise machine. Diapers, bottles, tiny onesies, they were everywhere. My sleep schedule became a chaotic mess of late-night feedings and early morning diaper changes. My code, usually pristine, was now punctuated by occasional syntax errors born from sleep deprivation. But every sleepless night, every wail, every messy diaper was worth it. Michael was a beacon of pure joy, a tiny human who radiated an infectious happiness. He learned to smile, a wide, gummy grin that could melt even the coldest heart. He learned to gurgle, to giggle, to grasp for fingers with surprising strength. He was a marvel, a testament to Chloe's unwavering courage. Chloe, despite the immense challenges of single motherhood, thrived. She was a natural, instinctively knowing how to soothe him, how to make him laugh, how to anticipate his every need. She completed her nursing degree, studying late into the night, fueled by caffeine and an iron will. She found a part-time job at a local clinic, working evening shifts so she could be with Michael during the day. She was fierce, independent, and utterly devoted to her son. I watched her, filled with an immense admiration, seeing the strong, resilient woman she had become, far beyond the fragile girl who had wept in the diner. My role evolved too. I became the designated babysitter, the late-night rock and play assembler, the early morning bottle preparer. I found myself anticipating Michael's needs, learning his routines, understanding his various cries. I even started developing a baby tracking app in my spare time, a practical, logical solution to the beautiful chaos of infant care. It was a project born not from corporate directives, but from pure, unadulterated love. Life settled into a rhythm. A new rhythm, vibrant and full, vastly different from my previous solitary existence. We celebrated Michael's first birthday, a small, intimate gathering at the loft with a few of Chloe's new friends from work and a couple of my old college buddies. My parents, of course, were absent. They had never once reached out. It hurt, a dull ache that lingered, but it no longer consumed me. Our new family, forged in defiance and love, was enough, more than enough. 2 years passed. Michael, now a bright-eyed, endlessly curious 2-year-old, was a whirlwind of energy. He babbled constantly, his vocabulary growing by the day, his chubby legs carrying him on endless explorations of the loft. He called me Uncle Dan, a title that warmed me to the core. He loved our spontaneous dance parties in the living room, his infectious giggles filling the space. He even started showing an interest in my coding, his tiny finger-tracing lines on my screen, demanding to know, "What's that, Uncle Dan?" Chloe, now a registered nurse, was working full-time at the Havenwood Community Hospital. She had found a rhythm, a balance between her demanding profession and her even more demanding role as a mother. She was thriving, independent, and visibly happy. Her gentle nature was still there, but now it was tempered with a quiet strength, a wisdom born from adversity. She had blossomed. My life, too, had changed irrevocably. My work as a software architect continued, but it no longer defined me. My small apartment, once just a place to sleep and code, was now a vibrant, noisy home filled with laughter and the joyful chaos of a growing child. I spent less time staring at screens, more time chasing a toddler around the park, reading him bedtime stories, and teaching him how to stack building blocks into precarious towers. I felt a sense of purpose, a connection to something larger than myself that I had never known before. We rarely spoke of my parents. Their absence was a quiet ache, a ghost in the corners of our lives, but it no longer held the power to wound. Chloe had moved on, focusing on Michael and her new life. I had too. We had built our own world, brick by brick, from the ashes of their rejection. Then, 3 years after that fateful day at the Caldwell house, a knock came at my door. It was a Tuesday afternoon, gray and drizzly, typical Havenwood weather. I was in the middle of a complex debugging session, my headphones clamped over my ears, when I heard it. A soft, hesitant rap, not the usual confident knock of a delivery person, or the familiar thud of a neighbor. This was different, a tentative, almost fragile sound. I pulled off my headphones, frowning. Michael was at daycare, Chloe was at work. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the door, a faint prickle of unease, unsettling my calm. Through the peephole, I saw a figure, blurred by the distorted glass. A woman. Her back was to me, her shoulders slumped, her hair, once impeccably styled, now slightly disheveled and streaked with gray. She clutched a large, worn handbag in her hands. My breath hitched. My mother, Eleanor Caldwell. My heart hammered against my ribs, a chaotic drumbeat of shock and disbelief. She hadn't contacted us in 3 years. Not a card, not a call, not even a cryptic message. Total, absolute silence. And now, here she was, standing on my doorstep, looking utterly defeated. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. What did she want? Was this some elaborate trick? Had something happened? My mind raced, churning through every possible scenario, none of them good. Then she turned slightly, and I saw her face. It was lined with a weariness I'd never seen before. Her eyes, once sharp and unforgiving, were clouded with a profound sadness. There were faint dark circles under them, and her lips, usually pursed in disapproval, were trembling slightly. She looked broken. I slowly unlocked the door, the click echoing loudly in the sudden silence. I pulled it open, just a crack, peering out at her. "Mom?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper, a strange mix of apprehension and a flicker of something akin to pity. Her gaze met mine, and for a long moment, she said nothing. Her eyes, though dull, still held that familiar Caldwell stubbornness, but it was now diluted by something else, regret, shame. Finally, she spoke, her voice raspy, a ghost of its former authoritative tone. "Daniel, may I come in?" I opened the door wider, stepping back. My apartment, so recently filled with the boisterous energy of Michael, suddenly felt small, exposed, vulnerable. She stepped inside, hesitantly, as if she expected the floor to give way beneath her. She looked around, her eyes sweeping over the living room, taking in the scattered toddler toys, the brightly colored children's books, the faint scent of baby powder and crayon. It was so vastly different from the pristine, museum-like quality of her own home. A faint blush crept up her neck, a telltale sign of her discomfort. "What do you want, Mom?" I asked, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. I kept my distance, my arms crossed over my chest, a defensive barrier. She wrung her hands, her gaze darting around the room, avoiding my eyes. I know this is sudden. I know I have no right to be here." Her voice was barely audible. I needed to see you, to talk." "Talk about what?" I pressed, my patience wearing thin. 3 years of silence, 3 years of abandonment, and now she wanted to talk? She finally lifted her gaze, meeting my eyes, and I saw the raw pain there. "Your father, he's gone." The words hit me like a physical blow. Gone? As in, dead? My mind reeled. Robert Caldwell, the immovable pillar, the unyielding patriarch, gone? It seemed impossible. He was a force of nature, a man who seemed destined to outlive us all, to forever stand as a monument to his own self-importance. "Gone where?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended, a strange mix of disbelief and a flicker of something that could have been grief, or perhaps just shock. He passed away last week," she choked out, a single tear tracing a path down her weathered cheek. "A sudden heart attack. He was alone." Alone. The word hung in the air, heavy with unspoken tragedy. My father, the man who had always surrounded himself with a carefully cultivated aura of importance, who valued status above all else, died alone. The irony was not lost on me. I'm sorry, Mom, I said, the words feeling hollow, inadequate. I felt no profound sorrow, no overwhelming grief, just a strange, numb emptiness. He had been a presence in my life, yes, but a distant, often painful one. His passing, while significant, did not leave the gaping wound I might have expected. The funeral was yesterday, she continued, her voice still trembling. It was small. Very few people came, his colleagues, a few distant relatives. No one from Havenwood, not really, not like it should have been, not for Robert Caldwell. She laughed then, a hollow, bitter sound devoid of mirth. His reputation, as he called it, didn't follow him to the grave. A silence descended, thick with unspoken accusations and years of regret. My mother, the woman who had always been so composed, so in control, was unraveling before my eyes. "Why are you here, Mom?" I asked again, my voice softer this time, a flicker of curiosity outweighing my lingering resentment. "You haven't spoken to us in 3 years. Why now?" She took a shaky breath, finally meeting my gaze head on. Because I realized something, Daniel, something terrible. After Robert, after he died, everything became clear. All those years, all that striving for perfection, for approval, for maintaining the Caldwell name, it was all for nothing. Her voice cracked, tears finally overflowing. "He died alone, Daniel. And I realized I was alone too, and it's my fault. All of it. I let him push Chloe away. I let him push you away. I let him destroy our family, all for the sake of something so meaningless." Her words hung in the air, echoing with a raw honesty that pierced through my defenses. This wasn't the stoic, unyielding Eleanor Caldwell I knew. This was a broken woman, stripped bare by grief and regret. I've had 3 years to think, she continued, her voice thick with emotion. 3 years of silence, 3 years of an empty house, of knowing that I chose reputation over my own children, and I've regretted it every single day, every single agonizing day. She looked around the room again, her eyes lingering on Michael's scattered toys. "Chloe, how is she? Is she well?" I hesitated, 1,000 emotions warring within me. Anger, bitterness, the lingering pain of abandonment, but also a strange, burgeoning sense of empathy for this woman, my mother, who stood before me, so utterly diminished, so profoundly lost. "Chloe is fine, Mom," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "She's a registered nurse now. She's working at the hospital. And Michael is thriving. He's a smart, happy kid." I watched her face, seeing the flicker of pain, of longing in her eyes at the mention of her grandson. "Michael," she repeated softly, the name tasting foreign on her tongue. "My grandson. I never even met him." Her voice was a barely audible whisper, thick with regret. The truth of her statement hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. She had missed everything. His first smile, his first steps, his first words, all sacrificed at the altar of Caldwell propriety. "What do you want, Mom?" I asked again, my voice gentler this time. The anger was fading, replaced by a profound sadness for the wasted years, for the fractured relationships. She lifted her eyes to mine, brimming with tears. I want forgiveness, Daniel. I know I don't deserve it. I know I failed you both spectacularly, but I'm here. I'm asking. I want a second chance. To be a mother again, to be a grandmother, before it's too late, before I'm gone too." Her plea hung in the air, raw and desperate. I stared at her, seeing not the rigid, unyielding woman who had disowned her daughter, but a fragile, aging woman, broken by loss, begging for redemption. It was a sight I never thought I'd witness. My mind flashed back to Chloe in the diner, her face pale, her body trembling, and then to the radiant joy on her face when Michael was born. She had chosen love, and so had I. Now, my mother, in her darkest hour, was asking for the same. Could I deny her? Could I hold on to the bitterness, the resentment, and let her suffer alone, just as she had allowed Chloe to suffer? Was that the kind of man I wanted to be? I looked around my loft, at the scattered toys, the comfortable clutter, the tangible evidence of the family Chloe and I had built, a family rooted not in rules and reputation, but in love, acceptance, and an unwavering loyalty. It wasn't perfect. It was messy, but it was real. Mom, I finally said, my voice rough with emotion. I can't speak for Chloe. That's her decision. But for me, I can't say I forgive you. Not entirely. Not yet. The pain, it runs deep. But I'm willing to try. For Michael, for us. I took a deep breath. Come back tomorrow. Chloe will be here. We'll talk. Really talk. Her eyes widened. A flicker of hope. Fragile but undeniable. Lighting them up. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you. She turned, moving towards the door, her steps still hesitant, but with a faint trace of purpose returning to them. As she reached the threshold, she paused, turning back. He looks just like Chloe, doesn't he? She whispered, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. The baby. I nodded. He does, Mom. He really does. She left then, and the silence that descended in her wake was different this time. Not empty, not hollow, but thoughtful, full of possibilities. The next day, Chloe was hesitant, her face pale, her body rigid with apprehension when I told her Mom was coming. Why now, Dan? After all this time? Her voice was raw, laced with the old wounds. She's alone, Chloe, I said softly, laying a hand on her arm. Dad passed away. She came to me. She's asking for a second chance. She's broken. Chloe's eyes widened, a complex mix of shock, and something I couldn't quite decipher. Perhaps a flicker of pity, perhaps just numbness. Dad, dead, she whispered, the words barely audible. She didn't show grief, only a profound detachment, as if she was speaking of a distant acquaintance rather than her own father. It was a testament to how deeply they had cut her. She wants to meet Michael, I continued, watching her carefully. She wants to be a grandmother. Chloe's gaze hardened. She lost that right, Dan, the day she walked away from me. I know, I conceded, and I'm not asking you to forgive her immediately. I'm just asking you to listen. For a moment. For us. For the chance, however slim, that we can heal some of this. If not for them, then for us. She was silent for a long moment, her eyes fixed on Michael, who was happily stacking building blocks in the corner, oblivious to the emotional tempest swirling around him. Finally, she sighed, a weary, defeated sound. Fine. But if she says one word, one single word about Mark or about her reputation, I swear I'll walk out. I nodded. Fair enough, I'll be here. We both will. My mother arrived precisely at 3. Her car, a stately dark sedan, pulling up to the curb. She was dressed simply, in a gray sweater and dark slacks, a stark contrast to her usual immaculate attire. She carried no gifts, no pretense, just herself, vulnerable and exposed. When she walked in, the air in the room became taut, stretched to a breaking point. Chloe stood by the window, her back to the door, her shoulders rigid. Michael, sensing the unspoken tension, stopped playing and looked up, his big, innocent eyes darting between the adults. Chloe, my mother said, her voice a hesitant whisper, her gaze fixed on her estranged daughter. Chloe slowly turned, her expression unreadable. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other, years of unspoken pain, anger, and regret hanging heavy between them. Then, Michael, always drawn to new faces, toddled forward, a brightly colored building block clutched in his hand. He looked up at my mother, his face alight with curiosity. Gamma? He asked, his voice a sweet, innocent question. He knew her from pictures, from the stories Chloe told him about our family, but he had never seen her in person. My mother gasped, her eyes widening, tears instantly springing forth. She dropped to her knees, oblivious to her carefully maintained composure, her arms outstretched. Michael? She whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Michael, unfazed by her tears, simply smiled, extending the building block towards her. Play, Gamma? My mother gently took the block, her hands trembling as she looked at her grandson, her face a mixture of wonder and profound sorrow. Yes, darling, she whispered, her voice thick with tears. Yes, let's play. And in that moment, the years of silence, the bitter words, the unforgivable abandonment, they didn't disappear, not entirely, but they began to recede, softened by the pure, unadulterated innocence of a child. They spent the next hour on the floor, building a shaky tower of blocks, Michael babbling happily, my mother, Eleanor Caldwell, actually laughing, a sound I hadn't heard from her in decades. Chloe watched, her expression slowly softening, a tentative smile gracing her lips. I stood back, watching the scene unfold, a quiet hope blooming in my chest. It wasn't a full reconciliation, not yet, but it was a start, a fragile, hopeful beginning. Over the next few months, my mother became a hesitant but determined presence in our lives. She would visit almost daily, always bringing a small, thoughtful gift from Michael. A new book, a colorful toy, a tiny, hand-knitted sweater. She never pushed, never demanded, always respectful of the delicate boundaries Chloe had erected. She'd sit quietly, watching Michael play, occasionally offering a gentle comment, a soft smile. She started doing small things around the house, discreetly folding laundry, washing dishes, as if trying to atone for her past sins through quiet acts of service. Chloe, slowly, tentatively, began to let her in. Their conversations were still strained, filled with unspoken pain, but they were happening. They talked about Michael, about his milestones, about his funny quirks. They talked about her nursing career, about the challenges of balancing work and motherhood. My mother listened, truly listened, something she had rarely done before. I could see the healing begin, slow and painstaking, but undeniably real. One evening, after Michael was asleep, I found Chloe and my mother sitting at the kitchen table, a half-empty pot of tea between them. Chloe was showing her photos of Michael on her phone, and my mother was actually smiling, a genuine, unforced smile. "He's growing so fast," my mother murmured, her voice soft, a hint of wistfulness in it. Chloe looked up, met my mother's gaze, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of understanding, of shared humanity. "He is," Chloe agreed. "He's my whole world." My mother reached across the table, taking Chloe's hand, her grip tentative but firm. "I'm so sorry, Chloe," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything. For not being there. For not fighting for you. For letting your father, for letting us push you away. I was wrong. So terribly, terribly wrong." Chloe's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't pull her hand away. "I know, Mom," she whispered back, her voice raw. "It hurt. It really hurt." "I know it did," my mother replied, tears streaming down her own face. "And I can never undo that. But I swear to you, I will spend every single day trying to make it right. If you'll let me." Chloe looked at her, truly looked at her, for a long, silent moment. And then she slowly nodded. "Okay, Mom," she said, her voice a little stronger, a little clearer. "Okay." It wasn't a dramatic embrace. No tearful reunion with soaring music. It was quiet, understated, but profound. It was the first true step towards reconciliation, a tentative bridge spanning the chasm of years of pain. And my father? His absence, though still present, no longer cast such a long, suffocating shadow. He had been a product of his time, of his upbringing, of a rigid system that valued reputation above all else. His passing, while tragic in its loneliness, also cleared the way for a new beginning, a chance for the surviving members of our family to redefine what Caldwell truly meant. As time went on, my mother became an integral part of our lives. She moved into a small condo a few blocks away, and she became Michael's most devoted gamma. She picked him up from daycare, baked him cookies, read him stories, and even attended his first soccer game, cheering louder than anyone. She was making up for lost time, not with grand gestures, but with consistent, quiet love. Chloe thrived. She found a deeper sense of peace, a quiet strength that emanated from her. She even started dating again, cautiously, testing the waters. There was a kind, steady doctor at the hospital named Ben who saw her for who she was, a brilliant nurse, a loving mother, and a woman of remarkable resilience. I liked him. He treated her with respect and genuine affection. And me? My life, once defined by screens and solitude, had expanded in ways I never imagined. I still loved my work as a software architect, but it was no longer my entire world. I had discovered the profound joy of family, of connection, of shared laughter, and quiet companionship. I had learned that love wasn't always neat or predictable. It was messy, complicated, often painful, but ultimately, it was the only thing that truly mattered. I found myself going on walks along the Columbia River, no longer lost in thought about code, but simply enjoying the crisp air, the glistening water, and the quiet satisfaction of a life that, against all odds, had found its rhythm. One evening, I sat on my balcony, watching the sunset paint the Havenwood sky in hues of orange and purple. Michael was asleep in his room, Chloe was out with Ben, and my mother was at her condo. The loft was quiet, but it was a comfortable quiet now, no longer hollow. I thought about the past 3 years, about the knock at the door, about the seismic shift in my life. I thought about the pain, the anger, the moments of despair, but I also thought about Chloe's laughter, Michael's infectious giggles, and my mother's tearful apology. We hadn't erased the past, but we had chosen to build a new future, one rooted in compassion, forgiveness, and unconditional love. They say blood is thicker than water, but sometimes it's the quiet choices you make, the hands you choose to hold, and the people you choose to stand by in their darkest hours that truly define family. My parents had disowned my pregnant sister. I took her in. 3 years later, a mysterious knock at the door revealed a shattered woman, but it also opened the path to healing, to redemption, and to a family reborn. My name is Dan, and I learned that true strength isn't in rigid adherence to old traditions or the pursuit of fleeting reputations. It's in the courage to love fiercely, to forgive deeply, and to embrace the beautiful, unpredictable chaos of a life truly lived. And that, I realized, was a legacy worth more than any name. It was etched not in stone, but in the beating hearts of those who truly loved.